Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. We're going to continue reading our book Al-Ajwatul Jaliyatu fil Ahkam al-Hanbaliyya, or the clear answer in Hanbali rulings, by a Sheikh Musa bin Isa al-Qadumi rahimahullah. This is lesson 42. We'll continue discussing some of the rulings related to Zakah. So let us begin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna bima yanfa'una wa zidna 'ilman wa 'amalan يا رب العالمين. قال المؤلف رحمه الله نفع الله به وبعلومه وعلوم مشايخنا في الدارين آمين. So the author rahimahullah, he says zakat of gold, silver and merchandise. Number 97. What is the nisab, or the minimum amount for gold and silver, and what is the ruling of merchandise? And as always, we're reading from our Sheikh Khalid Shah translation. We are on page 123. So the Sheikh rahimahullah, he answers, the nisab of gold is 20 mithqal, in parentheses, or 85 grams, and the nisab of silver is 200 dirhams, or 595 grams. The amount given is 1/4 of a tenth, or 2.5%. It is not wajib or obligatory to give zakat for gold and silver permitted to use. In parentheses, for example, gold is not allowed for men, which is prepared for personal usage or loaning. The prerequisites for zakat to be wajib on merchandise are that it a. reaches the nisab value of gold or silver, b. a year passes on it in the possession of that person, it is payable at the end of the year, and it is 1/4 of the tenth, as we mentioned already, 2.5%. So, like many of the measurements that we discuss in the books of fiqh, we are mentioning some older measurements, in particular the mithqal and the dirhams. But as what the author or the translator has mentioned, the nisab of gold being 85 grams, I don't think there's much debate on that. And for the nisab of silver being 595 grams, likewise I hear these numbers mentioned, but one can always double check with their local government or masjid on what is the local fatwa exactly defining those amounts. And with regards to these two metals that we mentioned, gold and silver, Imam Mar'i al-Karmi rahimahullah, he has mentioned in Dalil al-Talib that these two metals can be combined to reach the nisab, meaning it's not necessary, or we don't count, for example, the silver by itself and the gold by itself. So just as an example, if you had half of the nisab for gold and half of the nisab for silver, so when you combine it, you've reached the nisab, then it would be due on both of those two items that are combined. And as we mentioned in the last lesson, these precious metals, gold and silver, they differ a bit from some of the other items that we are mentioning, that we're now talking about charging them as per like a percentage. So that's just 2.5% of the total. Once again, after you've reached the nisab and you've maintained the nisab for the full year, then that amount is zakatable and you can apply the 2.5%. Now we'll look a bit on what At-Taghlibi has mentioned in Sharh Dalil al-Talib regarding jewelry, because jewelry is always a hot issue. The fuqaha have different opinions on whether jewelry is something that is zakatable, but as we mentioned here in the Matin, the core text of Al-Ajwaba, it is something that would generally not be zakatable, but we'll talk about that in detail now. So for any type of jewelry that is permissible to be used, and used can refer to both personal use and loaning it to others. And when we say loaning, we're just talking about a friendly loan, not as a necessarily like a business type of a loan. So this type of jewelry would be permissible, meaning that it would not, one would not have to pay zakat on it. Now this is in contrast to, for example, another category of jewelry, which we can call this jewelry, or even better to say in general, items that are gold or silver and haram to use. So for example, what the translator mentioned in parentheses here, gold for men. So gold jewelry for men is something haram, and it would not fall under what is not zakatable, i.e. it is zakatable. Likewise, any type of containers that were made out of gold or silver, or utensils like forks, knives, spoons, these would also fall under the realm of haram to use items and thus would be zakatable. Then there's another category of jewelry which we can call a jewelry that is generally permissible in itself, meaning, for example, women's gold jewelry. However, this jewelry is being used for renting out to other people, or as like some type of savings investment. I mean, there's like no intention to wear it at all. So if it's falling under these type of categories, then it would become zakatable. So under this ruling of containers and utensils, there are other items that by qiyas or by analogy would also be impermissible if they had gold on them. So for example, gold on a horse bridle, a golden pencil case, golden kohol container. Kohol is like the black substance that you can put around your eye, or likewise silver. I mean, these follow under the general prohibition of having gold and silver containers and utensils. And we will look at what is mentioned here in Sharh At-Taghlibi to take maybe a few additional benefits on some of the rulings for gold and silver. So it is haram to use gold and silver to decorate masajids, mosques. So that applies for also the mihrab or the ceiling of the mosque. I mean, anywhere you're using it for decoration in the mosque, it's not permissible. As we mentioned already, gold is impermissible for men to use as jewelry, but silver is, however, permissible. And even if one were to have, quite a large silver ring, for example, then it would still be permissible, meaning it would not be zakatable. It would fall under the permissible use jewelry. And regarding the silver ring, it is, according to our madhab, most preferred to wear the ring on the pinky of the left hand. And it is disliked to wear a ring, meaning a silver ring, on a pointer finger or a middle finger. So we previously mentioned a few of the containers and utensils that would be prohibited to have gold and silver. I can't remember, did we mention the horse bridle? Can say lamps, mirrors, combs, the inkwell. This is all going to be under the category of haram to be used. Now for women, unlike men, they can wear gold as jewelry as well as silver. And I mean, it's generally permissible for women for, whatever types of jewelry that women are wearing, the pendant, the necklaces, the crown, the ring, etc. What is, considered a normal jewelry for women to wear according to custom is all permissible. It is permissible for both men and women to wear or have items with gems on them. Fortunately, I'm not so good at translating some of these gem names into English, but I think we all understand, these type of precious or semi-precious gems that we see, being used as decoration, especially on rings. It is disliked to have a ring made out of a, we can say, lower value metal, such as iron or brass. It is mustahab, it is preferred to have a ring made out of aqiq. Aqiq, I believe, is called agate or garnet. I think if you see the types of rings that they sell for men in the Arab countries, this is generally made out of aqiq. At-Taghlibi mentions there is maybe some difference of opinion. Is it actually mustahab to use this aqiq for the ring, or simply permissible? But that's just kind of a minor discussion, and it's mentioned in many books such as Al-Muntaha, Al-Musta'wab, and here in Dalil al-Talib. So inshallah, that's the correct opinion. So next we're going to be talking about the zakat on the al-urud, or urud al-tijara, which is basically translated, I think, as merchandise. So whatever is bought and sold to make profit is considered merchandise. So likewise, we are looking for these items to reach the nisab, the minimum amount that's zakatable, and to maintain that nisab for a full year. As we mentioned in Al-Ajwaba, the nisab is the same as gold and silver, because these items for trade, they're understood as something kind of corresponding to gold and silver, as they have a value. So you would look at the value of the items, and then based on that value, you would use that to calculate the nisab. So as we said, it's the same amount that would be due, which is the 2.5% of the value. So now we'll take an additional section, inshallah, additional benefit. This is what's mentioned in Dalil al-Talib and the Sharh by Taghlibi. But basically, these are talking about the items that are mined from the earth. So mined, we mean things that I think we would generally call minerals, so not plants. This would include things like gold, silver, gems, aqiq, the agate, metals like lead or iron, kohl, the material that's put around the eyes, that's in fact itself a mineral. Also salt. So basically anything that is going to be mined from the earth, there's also a zakat on it. Oh, and this also includes oil. So if some of you are living in these oil countries, you should pay attention. So on these type of items, 2.5% would be due. And it would be due when the value of gold and silver would be reached. So it in other words, has the same nisab, but we wouldn't be calculating that amount until those items that are brought out of the earth are somehow purified or refined. I don't know exactly the right word. I don't think there's a word. It's kind of general for all these things, but basically the analogy is like the grains and the fruit. Whatever, like the grain, whatever's on the exterior, you have to remove it. So maybe some of these minerals have like some kind of rock on them. I mean, you would have to remove that because the rock isn't zakatable. So this is the first condition for the obligation of zakat of these mined items, that you have the nisab. And the second would be is that the people who are extracting these minerals, these mined items, would be from the people of whom zakat is obligatory for them, i.e. the Muslims. So now we're going to start the section on Zakat al-Fitr. We'll go back to our book Al-Ajwaba. Question 98, what is Zakat al-Fitr and what is its ruling? The author replies, Zakat al-Fitr is sadaqah. It is wajib at the end of Ramadan upon A, free Muslim, B, free person, C, for the one that possesses beyond the daily bread for himself and his family, for the day and night of Eid, and other than one needs for oneself, or that which is required for his Muslim dependents. So the author has mentioned that Zakat al-Fitr is a sadaqah, and sadaqah means like a charity. So technically we would call it a sadaqah wajiba, an obligatory charity that is due at the fitr of Ramadan. So fitr refers to the breaking of the fast, just like for example the root of fitr has to do with breaking the fast. That's why the breakfast can be called futur, because it's just like the English word. In fact, why do they call the first meal of the day breakfast? Because it's as if at night when you're sleeping that you're not eating. So it has the same, we can say, linguistic meaning by analogy as English. And something that's important to note is that if one is in debt, this doesn't prevent the obligation of paying the Zakat al-Fitr unless the one that has loaned the money is demanding the payback. So you would not consider being in debt to pay Zakat al-Fitr unless there was the immediate demand to repay. And this Zakat al-Fitr becomes obligatory the first night of Eid, for the Eid of al-Fitr after Ramadan. So if someone, for example, were to die before the Maghrib time, where the first night will start, there would be no Zakat due upon him. And as we mentioned, this Zakat al-Fitr is obligatory upon every Muslim who is also free, and it doesn't matter are they city dwellers or rural people or pastoralists, male, female, young, old, even the orphan. Upon anyone who is a free Muslim, this Zakat al-Fitr is due upon them. So the person who is a wali for the other people, he would pay. So the wali of, for example, the orphan will pay for him. Likewise, like in the family, it's not that a young boy or girl himself has to pay, but that person who is responsible for him, usually the father, will be the one that would have to pay on the behalf of that person, the dependent. And as we mentioned, it will also be due upon the person who has what he needs for himself and his dependents on the day of Eid and its night, after also considering things like what he needs as far as a residence, transportation, clothing. And the good benefit here, Al-Imam Mar'i al-Karmi mentions in Dalil al-Talib that also the books of knowledge are considered. So if one needs some books of knowledge because they're studying, this would also be considered as things that are required. And the Taghlibi mentions this is including for needing it, for whether just like looking at, meaning kind of just like more of a reading or researching, or actually memorization. And as we mentioned, that this Zakat al-Fitr will be due upon the one who is responsible for the dependents. We should be talking about Muslim dependents. So that would include, for example, his son or daughter, his spouse. And in the case that he had what he needs to cover the day and night of Eid, as we've discussed, but maybe he doesn't have the full amount to pay for all his dependents, he would start by paying for himself, and then his wife, and then his mother, if she was a dependent, then his father, if he was a dependent, then his sons, and if he had other dependent family members, then they would be being paid in order of who is receiving the largest part of his inheritance, theoretically. And finally, if a woman is pregnant, one would also pay Zakat al-Fitr upon the fetus inside the woman, even though it's not born yet. But this is only a sunnah, it's not obligatory. But we should strive to follow the sunnah. So we'll stop here for today. We'll continue in the next lesson discussing the Zakat al-Fitr, including how is it paid, and we will also mention the rulings, or we can say the description of the recipients of Zakat. So we will end here. As always, please don't forget us in your dua and that of our scholars of this world and the next, and all of our brothers and sisters across the world. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.